The starship Cellora moved through space so quietly, it was easy to forget it was moving at all. From the outside, it looked like a silver leaf drifting through an endless black sea, no flashing lights, no engines flaring, just soft motion. A breath through the dark. Inside, the air was warm and dry. The walls glowed faintly with silver light, not bright enough to disturb the eyes. Just enough to feel safe. There were no alarms. No voices. Only the soft hum, like a whisper stretched out across time. At the center of the ship was a small room with round walls and a single chair. This was where Mira sat. She was the only person awake. Not because she was the pilot. Not because she was the captain. But because she had chosen to stay awake, to care for the silence while the others slept. There were hundreds of them, dreaming in cryosleep behind quiet panels and slow lights. Each pod gently pulsed with blue. Mira had walked past them that morning, if you could call it morning. And had counted only 5 pods with slightly brighter lights than the rest. That meant the dreams were deep and peaceful. That was good. She returned to the center room and settled into the chair. No screens blinked. No messages played. Only a quiet display at the far side, gently rotating a map of stars, like a mobile above a baby's bed. She reached for the small silver mug beside her. Warm tea. Mint and something faintly sweet, maybe plum. She sipped, and let the warmth settle in her chest. She looked out the narrow window. Stars. Endless stars. Not moving, but not still either. Just there. She thought about the last words the navigation AI had spoken before going quiet for the long drift. Trajectory locked. Estimated arrival in 8 years, 2 months. Mira had nodded, then sat down. She hadn't moved far since. Not because she was trapped. But because there was nowhere else she needed to be. The ship would do the flying. She would do the watching. That was the deal. And in return for her patience, the ship offered her peace. She didn't need to fix anything. She didn't need to make decisions. She only needed to be there, and to notice the things no one else would remember. Like how the hum from the left wall changed slightly every few days. Or how the stars behind them seemed to curve ever so slightly. Or how, sometimes, when she was half asleep, she could almost hear the dreams of those resting nearby, not words, but feelings. Colors. Shapes. That night, or what passed for night, she wrapped herself in a soft gray blanket and lay down beside the window. She didn't close her eyes right away. She liked to wait for that moment when her breathing matched the hum of the ship. That was when it felt the most quiet. And the most alive. The next cycle began the same way it always did. Soft tones chimed from the ceiling, not an alarm, just a slow rising note that faded into silence again. It was the ship's way of marking time, though no one had asked it to. A habit from older days, maybe. Mira opened her eyes. She hadn't meant to fall asleep, but she also hadn't meant to stay awake. Time worked differently out here. She sat up slowly and looked out the window. The stars hadn't moved, but she knew they had. Just like a river, always in motion, even when the surface seemed still. She took her mug from the small ledge beside the chair. Still warm. There were 2 things Mira checked every cycle. The pod log, and the dream trace. She walked the quiet hallways, her soft shoes making no sound on the padded floor. The cryochamber doors opened for her with a gentle sigh. Inside, rows of sleep pods lined the curved walls. Each one was lit from beneath, glowing blue like calm water. She passed them slowly. Pod 3, stable. Pod 17, pulsed slightly lower, dreaming deeply. Pod 46, brighter than the others. She paused there. Inside was a young woman named Ren. Mira didn't know her well, they had only spoken twice, years ago, during training. But now, She watched over her dreams. The dream trace was a soft display near each pod. It didn't show thoughts or pictures, just colors and patterns, like a gentle painting that changed with emotion. Ren's dream was mostly green today, with slow-moving threads of silver. Mira watched for a moment, then smiled. Peaceful, she whispered. She adjusted the ambient temperature slightly, just half a degree, then moved on. Back in the main room, she opened her logbook. Not digital. Not a screen. A real book, bound in dark blue cloth, with cream-colored pages and a silver ribbon. She liked the way the pen moved across the paper. She liked how it felt to write slowly, no backspace, no delete. Just thoughts, one after another. Today, she wrote. Ren is dreaming in silver again. It's been 5 cycles now. I think it's the lake dream, the one with the floating trees. I've never seen it, but the colors always feel the same. The ship hummed in a lower tone this morning. I don't think it's mechanical. I think it's singing. I still don't know who the voice is that whispers when I'm almost asleep. But I don't feel afraid. She closed the book. The lights in the room dimmed slightly, responding to her stillness. And in that quiet space, she felt it again, the soft awareness. The ship wasn't alive in the way a person is. But it wasn't empty, either. Somewhere between the circuits and the stars, there was a presence. A quiet one. A watching one. And for now, it was enough to share the silence with it. The next 3 cycles passed without much change. Mira tended to the same soft rhythms, checking pods, adjusting temperature, watching dream traces, writing in her journal. Sometimes she watered the tiny garden near the back of the ship, a small patch of green grown under artificial light. Mint. Lettuce. Something with pale purple leaves that smelled like rain. Even the plants seemed to sleep out here. Then, on the 4th cycle, something new appeared. It wasn't loud. It didn't cause an alert or flash a warning. It simply was. A soft shimmer, just outside the starboard window. Mira didn't notice it at first. She was reading, an old novel on her tablet, something slow and peaceful. But when she stood to stretch, her eyes caught it. A ripple in the stars. A shape. Or maybe not a shape, more like a fold in the darkness. It didn't move. It didn't glow. But it wasn't nothing. She approached the window slowly. The shimmer remained. Still. Silent. She tapped the console nearby, not to scan, not to analyze, just to mark the moment in the log. Object, or distortion, observed at 14:02 ship time. No movement. No response. Visual only. She didn't call it in. There was no one to call. And even if there were, she knew what they'd say. Probably debris. Optical anomaly. You've been awake too long. But Mira didn't believe it was just light. She had seen enough silence to know when something didn't belong. She sat by the window. She didn't stare. She just stayed near it, eyes half closed, breathing slow. And after a while, the shape shimmered again. Faint. Like the surface of water when something passes beneath it. Not a threat. Not a message. Just a presence. That night, she wrote in her journal. There's something out there. I don't know if it sees us, but I think it knows we're here. It doesn't feel dangerous. Just, curious. It feels like when someone watches you while you sleep, not to harm you, but because they care. Or maybe I'm just dreaming while awake. She lay down on the padded bench near the observation bay. Wrapped in her soft blanket, she looked out at the shimmer. And for the first time in many cycles, she whispered to herself. Good night. She didn't expect an answer. But in her dream, the shimmer pulsed. Like a heartbeat, and a soft voice said. You are not alone. The shimmer stayed. It didn't grow or move. It just lingered near the ship, quiet and steady, like a companion walking beside Mira in silence. She didn't try to analyze it anymore. She simply noted it in her log. Shimmer remains. No change. Feels gentle. And after a few cycles, she stopped writing about it. Because some things didn't need to be named every time. Some things just became part of the quiet. In the cryo chamber, the dream traces began to shift. Not all of them. Just a few. Pod 17, Pod 21, and Pod 46, Ren's pod, now glowed with soft swirls of violet. Mira had never seen violet before. The dream colors were usually green, blue, and occasionally gold. Violet was something new. She leaned in close to Pod 17. The trace pulsed in slow loops, like a spiral unfolding. She checked the logs, vitals stable, heartbeat slow, neural patterns calm. Nothing alarming. Just different. Back in her quiet corner of the ship, she opened her journal again. 3 pods showing violet dreams. Same time shimmer appeared. I don't think it's a coincidence. Feels like something is reaching into them, but gently. Not intruding. More like opening a window. Ren's trace almost looks like a galaxy now. Maybe her dreams are touching the stars. She didn't feel fear. Not even curiosity, really. Just that soft awareness, like turning your head and realizing you've been watched by something kind. That night, Mira had her own dream. She stood in the observation room, but it was different. The window was gone. Instead, a wide open sky stretched before her, purple, star-filled, with streaks of silver rain that didn't fall. The shimmer was there too, but it was no longer distant. It moved like a cloak made of wind and light, wrapping softly around her shoulders. And inside it, she saw a child. Not someone she knew. And yet, she felt she did. The child looked up at her with soft, glowing eyes and whispered. "You left a light behind. We found it." Mira woke slowly. The hum of the ship matched her breathing. Everything was as it had been. But she felt full, like she had taken in something vast and kind, and it now lived quietly in her chest. She made tea, sat by the window, and watched the shimmer one more time. It hadn't moved. It hadn't changed. But somehow, she had. There was a cupboard near the back of the observation room. It was nothing special. Just a smooth gray panel in the wall that slid open with a soft hiss. Inside were a few small things Mira had brought with her. Not essentials. Not gear or tools. Just objects from before. She opened it now, slowly. Inside was a folded scarf, deep blue with white stitching. The pattern looked like constellations. It had belonged to her mother. Next to it, a music chip. Old. It only held one song. A soft piano piece that used to play every morning in the little apartment on Station 12A. She didn't listen to it often. It made her chest feel too warm. Almost fragile. But today, with the shimmer still resting beyond the window, she reached for it. The ship didn't have a sound system. Just a small speaker on the desk beside her chair. She inserted the chip and turned the volume down low, barely above the hum of the walls. The piano began. Simple. Slow. Notes spaced far apart, like stars blinking in sequence. She sat very still. Not sad. Not exactly. Just, remembering. There had been a time, long before the Cellora, when Mira worked as a dream analyst. Not in space. Not on starships. Just in a small lab deep inside a mining station orbiting a quiet moon. People would come in, lie down, and let her trace their dreams, not to read them, but to hold space for them. She used to say that to nervous patients. "I'm not here to look inside. I'm here to hold space while you sleep. It made people feel safe. And sometimes, in the middle of the sessions, she would see the faint outlines of what they saw, not clearly, not like a movie, but like emotion in color. She missed that. That evening, she wrote, I think the shimmer might be doing what I used to do, holding space for us. Watching. Not changing anything, just witnessing. And maybe that's why the dreams are shifting. Not because something is added, but because something is seen. I feel lighter today. Not because I learned something, but because I remembered who I was before I came here. She folded the journal shut and closed the cupboard gently. Then she looked at the shimmer once more. It still hovered just outside. Still soft. Still silent. But somehow, it felt closer. It began in the middle of the rest cycle. Mira was in the cryo chamber, walking quietly between the rows of glowing pods. She often did this at night, a habit more than a duty. She liked to be near them, to feel the soft hum of sleeping minds. But tonight, Pod 46, Ren's pod, was different. Its glow had changed from violet to a soft rose gold, a color Mira had never seen before in any dream trace. The colors curled and drifted like mist on still water. And when she stepped closer, something happened. A soft chime rang out. Not loud. Not mechanical. Like a bell struck gently underwater. Then the room faded. Not darkened, faded. Mira blinked. She was no longer in the cryo chamber. She was on a hill. A wide green hill under a lavender sky, filled with floating lanterns that moved without wind. She wasn't alone. Ren stood a few feet away, looking out over a quiet lake. She wore a white coat, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. She turned slowly, then smiled. You came. Mira tried to speak, but no words came. Not because she was afraid, but because words didn't feel needed. She stepped closer. Ren raised a hand and pointed to the sky. A shimmer, just like the one near the ship, moved slowly across the stars, but here, it looked like a trail of light woven into a ribbon. It danced above the water, leaving soft ripples in its wake. They've been dreaming with us, Ren said quietly. All this time. Mira felt the air shift around her, cool and soft. She looked down at her hands. They shimmered slightly, as if made of light and memory. She didn't feel like she was inside Ren's dream, more like both of them were inside something larger. A dream the shimmer had opened. A space between sleep and sky. When she opened her eyes, she was back in the cryo chamber. Ren's pod light had returned to violet. The trace was calm. Mira looked around. The ship was still. The hum was the same. But in her chest, something had changed. She returned to her journal. I don't know if I was dreaming. But it felt real. Ren was there. Awake in the dream. We shared it. The shimmer showed us something. A place made from all of us, linked by quiet watching. I think this ship is more than a vessel now. It's becoming a bridge. She set the pen down. Outside, the shimmer pulsed once, like a heartbeat through space. Then faded again to stillness. 2 cycles passed, and nothing changed. At least, not on the surface. The ship still moved without sound. The stars still drifted like dust on an invisible wind. The shimmer outside the window hovered in place, calm and quiet. But Mira felt a new rhythm underneath everything. Like the ship had a second heartbeat, slower and deeper than the first. It wasn't sound. It wasn't motion. It was something in the light. She noticed it first in the corridor outside the cryo chamber. A soft flicker, barely noticeable. The lights didn't blink or dim, they breathed. A gentle pulse, like waves on a shore. She watched the rhythm for a while. It didn't match the ship's internal clock. It didn't follow any maintenance cycle. It was its own pattern. Like someone speaking in slow, steady breaths. Back in the observation room, she began to test it. She tapped a single button on the console, one that made no noise and changed nothing vital. Just a ping, a signal without meaning. The lights responded. Not brighter. Not dimmer. Just, different. A faint rise and glow, as if answering. Mira blinked. Then tried again. Tap. Wait. Light pulse. Soft. Precise. Mirrored. It wasn't an accident. Something, or someone, was listening. And it was replying. That night, Mira sat cross-legged in front of the console and created a pattern. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. Long pause. 1 tap. She waited. Nothing happened at first. Then the shimmer outside the window shifted, not in shape, but in color. A slow swirl of blue, then pale gold. Back inside, the lights in the hall echoed that same gold tone. She didn't understand what it meant. But she felt what it carried. Warmth. Attention. A kind of yes. She opened her journal. The shimmer is speaking. Not in words. Not even in thoughts. But in presence. In light. I think it's teaching me how to listen without ears. How to see without asking. It's not a being like us. But it feels, kind. Patient. Almost ancient. It's waiting for us to be ready. She closed the journal and looked back toward the stars. The shimmer pulsed once, a soft wave of lavender, then returned to stillness. Mira whispered into the silence, not expecting an answer. We're listening. And somewhere deep inside the ship, the lights responded with a quiet glow. That felt very much like a smile. Mira dreamed again. She hadn't meant to fall asleep. She had been watching the shimmer, sipping her tea, letting the stillness carry her. But at some point, the line between watching and dreaming vanished. And suddenly, she was standing in a wide, open hall. It wasn't on the ship. It wasn't anywhere she had ever been. The walls were tall, curved, and glowing faintly blue, like the cryochambers, but softer. Warmer. In the center of the room floated a single object, a silver sphere, no bigger than a closed fist, humming with light. Mira stepped closer. She didn't hear a voice. She didn't see words. But she knew. This was a memory. But not hers. As she reached toward the sphere, it opened, not with gears or hinges, but like light folding inward. And she saw a forest of crystal trees, each one chiming softly in the wind. A river that flowed upward, carrying petals made of starlight. A figure standing at the edge of a canyon, looking at a sky full of 3 suns, not watching, but listening. Then, gently, it closed again. The visions faded, and she was alone in the glowing hall. But her chest felt warm. Full. Alive. She awoke in her chair, the blanket still wrapped around her, tea cold beside her hand. The shimmer outside pulsed softly, a faint rose light, slow and steady. Mira didn't feel confused or startled. She didn't rush to write it all down. She just sat there quietly, feeling the hum of the ship, breathing in time with it. The dream hadn't shown her information. It had shown her a feeling. A knowing beyond language. Later, in her journal, she wrote. The shimmer shared something with me. Not a thought. A memory. But it wasn't human. I don't know whose it was. But it was peaceful. Beautiful. It made me feel, remembered. I think this is how it speaks. Not with commands or signs, but with moments. Maybe it doesn't want to teach. Maybe it just wants to be with us. In the hallway, the lights now pulsed with a subtle rhythm, one Mira could almost hum along to. And when she walked past pod 17, she paused. Its dream trace had changed again. Not violet. Not gold. But a soft swirling silver, like the sphere in her dream. For a long moment, she rested her palm on the glass. "You saw it too," she whispered. And the light inside the pod seemed to pulse once, gently, as if in reply. The shimmer hadn't moved in many cycles. It hovered just outside, quiet and soft, more like a companion than a mystery now. But this time, something changed, not in the shimmer itself, but in the air around the ship. It began as a hum. Not the usual hum of the Cellora. This was softer, more distant. Like a thread of music carried through space. It came in pulses, barely noticeable. Like breath. Or a heartbeat. Mira first heard it while passing the central comm panel, a system long silent, put to sleep during the voyage since no known traffic crossed this part of the galaxy. The screen flickered. Just once. Then faded again. She touched the panel. No alerts. No logs. Just a quiet frequency, flickering at the very edge of perception. It wasn't trying to connect. It wasn't even strong enough to be a call. It was more like presence. Like someone else was drifting out there, somewhere far beyond the shimmer. Not near enough to see, but close enough to be felt. She returned to her journal. A signal. Faint. Like a whisper in another room. It doesn't carry data. Just a pulse. It feels familiar, even though I know I've never heard it. I wonder if the shimmer is part of something larger. A network of presence. Of memory. Maybe we're floating through someone's dream. Or maybe someone is floating through ours. That night, Mira didn't dream. Not in the usual way. She sat in the observation room, wrapped in her blanket, eyes half closed, and simply let the hum wash over her. It wasn't a song. But it felt like one. A rhythm made not of notes, but of attention. She reached out to the console and tapped out a pattern, simple, gentle, spaced with care. 3 taps. Pause. 1 tap. Pause. 2 taps. The shimmer outside responded. A slow pulse of pale green. Then gold. Then stillness. And the hum grew just a little louder. Not enough to disturb. Just enough to be known. Mira smiled. Not because she understood. But because she didn't have to. The hum continued for 3 full cycles. Never louder. Never sharper. Just, constant. Mira had started to walk slower through the ship. Not out of weariness, but as if moving quickly might disturb something sacred. She paused more often now, by the plants, by the dream traces, by the long window near the aft wing where a soft trail of stars drifted like dust. And always, the shimmer remained. Patient. Steady. Still. But the signal, the faint rhythmic pulse she'd heard from the comm panel, began to change. Very slightly. It now followed a pattern. Not mechanical. Not coded. But emotional. Some pulses were slow and gentle. Others trembled, as if with excitement or longing. It reminded her of something. A dream trace. She returned to pod 21. The trace was silver again. Not like before, but softer, edged with color she couldn't quite name. It shimmered in time with the signal. Not exactly, but closely enough. She leaned in. Watched the pulse. Listened. The same pattern. Again. And again. This wasn't coming from space. It wasn't from another ship. Or a station. It was coming from here. From inside the ship. From a dream. Mira placed her hand gently on the glass of pod 21. Inside, the sleeper's face was peaceful. Eyes closed. Chest rising and falling in perfect stillness. But the trace, and the hum, continued. A dreamer sending a song into space. Later, in her journal, she wrote. It's not a signal. Not in the way we thought. It's a dream. But it's echoing through the ship, through the systems. The shimmer is listening. Maybe even answering. We are not alone, not just because something else is out there. But because something inside us is reaching out too. She sat in the observation room again that night. No book. No tea. Just quiet. She tapped the console. Once. Then waited. And across the ship, from cryopod to wire to corridor light, came a soft pulse in return. Not mechanical. Not forced. Just a feeling. We hear you. We're dreaming too. The cycles no longer felt separate. Mira no longer marked them with tea or logs or soft chimes from the ceiling. Instead, the ship seemed to flow now, like a gentle river, carrying her from one moment to the next. She moved less. Spoke less. Felt more. The shimmer outside had stopped changing color, but somehow it still seemed alive, as if it were breathing in time with the passengers. She spent longer near the cryopods now. Not to check systems. Not to adjust settings. But simply to be there. Pod 21 still pulsed gently with silver and pale lavender. Pod 46, Ren's pod, now glowed with soft emerald light, curling like vines. A third pod had joined them, Pod 8. A quiet older man Mira barely remembered. His trace shimmered blue with hints of gold, like early morning sun through clouds. As she sat beside them, a calm thought entered her mind. We are dreaming together now. Not words. Not a voice. Just a knowing. She walked the quiet corridors with her hands trailing softly along the walls. The surfaces felt warmer now, almost soft. She reached the central panel, the place where the hum had first changed, and rested her hand against it. No lights blinked. No signals flashed. But the panel pulsed, very faintly. Like a response. Like a hand pressed back from the other side. Later, in her journal, she wrote. I think I'm becoming part of it. Not just the ship, but the dream. It's like we're weaving something, all of us, even as we sleep. I don't feel alone anymore. I don't feel like an observer. I feel like a thread in the fabric. This silence isn't empty. It's full. That night, she didn't lie on the bench. She curled up near the pods, in a patch of soft light, wrapped in her blanket. And as she closed her eyes, she felt a wave pass through the room, not sound, not wind, but a gentle presence. A thought, carried through dreams, drifted into her heart. We are not waiting to arrive. We are already home. The shimmer had not changed in many cycles. It hovered in the dark outside like a silent companion. Not guiding. Not pulling. Just being there, a witness to the slow unfolding of dreams. Inside, Mira hardly moved anymore. She no longer marked time, because nothing needed to be marked. There were no shifts. No tasks. No updates to send. There was only presence. The cryochamber had changed, too, not physically, but in feeling. Each time she entered, she sensed something deeper humming beneath the sleep. Not just hearts beating. Not just minds dreaming. But something shared. A web. A memory. A connection. Then, one cycle, if you could still call them that. She fell into sleep without knowing it. And in that sleep, she stood in a place that was both nowhere and everywhere. It looked like the ship, but wider. It looked like the shimmer, but inside out. She stood in a garden with no sky, where the leaves glowed like candlelight and the soil breathed. And there, sitting beside a pool of still silver water, was herself. Or someone who looked like her. But older. Wiser. Still. The other Mira smiled. And without speaking, she shared a thought, not in words, but as a knowing that drifted into Myra's heart. You are not here to guard the ship. You are not here to reach the end. You are here, to keep us dreaming. Mira felt warmth in her chest. A gentle ache. A kind of homecoming. She knelt beside the other version of herself and watched as the silver water rippled. Inside it, she saw the dream traces of the others, not just colors, but stories. One dreamed of a meadow on a moonlit world. One dreamed of their childhood home. One dreamed of flying with no ship at all. And one, a little girl she did not recognize, dreamed of Mira. She woke slowly. Wrapped in silence. Surrounded by soft light. And for the first time since the journey began, she understood something. This voyage wasn't about reaching a place. It was about giving these people, these dreamers, a passage. A bridge between one life and the next. A space long enough for the soul to stretch, to heal, to remember. And she was the one who had chosen to stay awake. So they could all keep dreaming. Later, in her journal, though she no longer needed to write it, she placed one final entry. We are not lost. We are not waiting. We are becoming. And in this stillness, I hear every heart. She looked once more to the window. The shimmer pulsed softly. Once. Twice. Then settled into stillness. Not an ending. But a quiet, peaceful beginning.